Only Black daughter is pregnant, betrayed, and kicked out, but Triplets turn the story around, and in the end, she placed her hand on her stomach, feeling a flutter that might have been the baby or might have been hunger. "We'll be okay," she whispered, not believing it herself. Have you ever had your entire world collapse in a single moment? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Rain pounded against her face as she stood clutching her suitcase, one hand protectively over her stomach. The daughter they'd celebrated for 24 years, now a stranger on her own doorstep. "Get out, now!" Her father's voice cut through the storm, each word a bullet aimed at her heart. The security guard shifted uncomfortably behind him, avoiding her eyes. Naomi Walker couldn't process how quickly everything had collapsed. Just hours earlier, she'd gathered her courage to share what should have been joyful news. Now, the Buckhead mansion that had been her home stood like a fortress against her, windows glowing with warmth she could no longer access. "Dad, please, if you just look at the test results." Her voice broke as Thomas stepped into view, his face a mask of cold detachment. "I've seen everything I need to see," Thomas said, the Miami tech investor who proposed just 3 months ago, now standing firmly beside her father. "My mother warned me about women like you." Lightning fractured the Atlanta skyline as the mansion's iron gates closed behind her, security cameras watching coldly as she stumbled toward the waiting Uber, designer heels sinking into wet grass. The driver didn't ask questions when she sobbed in the back seat, mascara creating black rivers down her cheeks. The memories flooded back as the car moved through rain-slicked streets. Thomas flying her to Paris for their third date, her father's proud toast at their engagement party, the family diamond now burning in her pocket like a lie. How had whispers turned to accusations? How had love turned to contempt so quickly? At the Greyhound station, she stared at the departure board through swollen eyes. Birmingham, her mother's hometown, the only place she could think to go. With shaking hands, she purchased a ticket, her Black American Express card, a gift from her father, declined at the terminal. Cash from her wallet would have to do. The waiting area smelled of industrial cleaner and disappointment. Her silk blouse clung to her skin, designer jeans now mud-splashed at the hem. A woman with kind eyes offered her a tissue. "You look like you've had one hell of a night, honey." Naomi nodded, unable to explain that yesterday she'd been heiress to the Walker fortune, engaged to one of Miami's most eligible bachelors. Today, she was pregnant, alone, and disowned. All because of a lie she hadn't even been allowed to disprove. She placed her hand on her stomach, feeling a flutter that might have been the baby or might have been hunger. "We'll be okay," she whispered, not believing it herself. The memory of Thomas's body pressed against hers just weeks ago, his hands gentle, his words loving, made her physically ache. How could the same man who had whispered promises against her skin now look at her with such disgust? How could he believe she would betray him? Have you ever had your entire world collapse in a single moment? When the people you trusted most turned their backs on you? Tell me in the comments if you've ever had to start over with nothing but your dignity. As the Greyhound pulled away from Atlanta, Naomi pressed her forehead against the cool window, tears mixing with raindrops. Her phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Don't contact me or my family again." But what neither of them knew was that her body carried more than just evidence of their love. It held a revelation that would shake the foundations of both their families. 8 months earlier, she had walked into the tech conference wearing confidence like armor, not knowing the man watching her from across the room would give her everything she wanted before taking it all away. Naomi adjusted her blazer, mentally reviewing her presentation points. As the youngest project manager at her Silicon Valley firm, she had fought twice as hard for half the recognition. This conference could change everything. That slide transition was seamless, a deep voice commented as she packed up her laptop after her talk. "Your coding background shows in your attention to detail." She looked up into eyes that seemed to see past her professional veneer. Thomas Reeve. She recognized him immediately from tech magazines and investment portfolios. Tall, with shoulders that filled out his custom suit perfectly, a smile that transformed his serious face into something approachable. Most investors don't notice coding details, she challenged, not bothering to hide her suspicion. Men like him didn't approach women like her without agenda. Most investors didn't write code before they managed money. His smile deepened. Would you let me buy you coffee and prove I actually understood your presentation? Their first date unfolded on a private rooftop in San Francisco. The Golden Gate Bridge glowing amber in the distance as he poured champagne that caught the candlelight like liquid gold. The second date lasted an entire weekend in Napa Valley. By the third, in Paris, his lips found hers under the Eiffel Tower sparkle. You're nothing like the women my mother introduces me to, he confessed, fingers tracing her cheekbone. You challenge everything I say. It's exhausting. His smile made a compliment. You're nothing like the men who usually notice me, she admitted. They want to impress me. You seem more interested in knowing me. Their first night together came after a month of building tension. His hotel suite in New York, overlooking Central Park. His hands moved with reverent patience, asking permission with each new touch until she finally whispered, "Stop asking and just feel me." What's the moment you knew someone would change your life forever? Was it a look, a touch, a conversation that made you feel truly seen? Share that moment below. Meeting the families came next. His mother's tight smile and probing questions about Naomi's background in Birmingham before her mother married Charles Walker. Her father's obvious pride as Thomas discussed expanding his investment portfolio into Southern real estate. They'll come around, Thomas assured her after a particularly frosty dinner with his parents at their Miami mansion. My mother is old-fashioned. She pictured me with someone from our circle. Someone white. Naomi asked directly. Thomas kissed her forehead. Someone boring. You're brilliantly disruptive. When Thomas slid the 3-carat diamond onto her finger 6 months later, promising forever in front of both their families, she didn't notice his mother's tight smile or the whispered conversation with her father in the corner. By the time she understood what those whispers meant, it would be too late. The pregnancy test showed positive on the morning of Thomas's biggest business meeting. The same day his mother decided Naomi wasn't fit to carry the Reeve family name. 2 pink lines. Undeniable. Naomi stared at the plastic stick, calculations running through her mind. They'd been careful, but no method was perfect. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone to call Thomas. Straight to voicemail. Of course, he was finalizing the merger that would consolidate Reeve Technologies' position in the market. She texted instead, "Need to talk tonight." Important news. His response came hours later. Working late. Family dinner tomorrow instead. The family dinner. She hadn't planned to announce the pregnancy in front of his parents, but maybe it would help, showing that their bloodlines were now irrevocably connected. She arrived at the Reeve mansion in a cream dress that concealed any changes to her body. Thomas greeted her with distraction rather than his usual warmth, kissing her cheek instead of her lips. Mother's in a mood, he warned. The merger's hitting some regulatory hurdles. Naomi nodded, filing away her news for a private moment. But private moments never came at Reeve family gatherings. Someone always hovered, interrupted, or redirected. Thomas's mother kept Naomi engaged in conversation about China patterns while his father monopolized business talk. You'll want the classic patterns, Mrs. Reeve insisted, eyeing Naomi's engagement ring. Though I suppose your tastes might run different. The undercurrent was clear. Naomi wasn't what they'd pictured for their son. Not rich enough by birth, not connected enough by background, not white enough by existence. The shift happened during dessert. Thomas's cousin Eliza leaned close to his mother, whispering something that made the older woman's eyes snap to Naomi with fresh calculation. The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. In the days that followed, Thomas grew distant. Phone calls went unanswered. Texts received brief replies. When they finally met for dinner a week later, she watched his face transform as the rumors reached him. How his eyes, once warm with adoration, turned to shards of ice as he studied her body as if it held someone else's child. My mother mentioned you've been seen with your ex, he said finally, voice flat. Multiple times. The accusation blindsided her. What ex? Thomas, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't insult me by lying. His words were quiet but cutting. "The baby, is it even mine?" When have words poisoned something beautiful in your life? When did whispers turn into weapons? Double tap if you felt the sting of rumors targeting you. That night, in his Miami condo, she made one last desperate attempt to bridge the growing chasm. She reached for him in bed, hoping their physical connection might reopen communication. His body responded briefly before he pulled away, leaving her cold and humiliated. The night everything collapsed, she placed her engagement ring on his desk alongside a sealed envelope. "The paternity test you demanded," she said, voice steady despite the tears. "I took it not for you, but for our child." As she turned to leave, Thomas made a choice he would regret for years. He left the envelope unopened and called her father instead. In Birmingham, she built a life from scratch. One doctor's appointment, one job interview, one furnished room at a time. Her growing belly, both a burden and a blessing, as she proved to herself what her family never believed, that Naomi Walker needed no one's approval to survive. The basement apartment cost most of her remaining savings. One bedroom, barely enough space for a bed and crib. The landlady, Mrs. Jackson, eyed Naomi's designer luggage with suspicion, but softened at the sight of her pregnancy. "First baby?" she asked, handing over the keys. "First everything," Naomi admitted. "First time on my own." Birmingham felt both foreign and familiar. Her mother had grown up here before marrying into Atlanta wealth. The city held no memories of Thomas, no shadows of her father's disappointment, just possibilities and necessities. Her one-bedroom apartment measured smaller than her walk-in closet back home. But the morning sun through threadbare curtains painted the walls gold, warming a space that belonged entirely to her. Job hunting while pregnant meant hearing a lot of "we'll call you back" that never materialized. Her tech credentials eventually landed her remote work with a startup. Less money than she was worth, but enough to cover rent and prenatal vitamins. Each night, dreams of Thomas haunted her, his hands on her skin, his voice in her ear, sensations so real she woke reaching for him before reality crashed back. Sometimes the dreams turned to nightmares. His face contorted with the same disgust he'd shown the night he accused her of betrayal. Her body changed week by week, growing rounder, stranger, a physical manifestation of how completely life had transformed. Sometimes she caught herself admiring the curve of her belly in the mirror, marveling at this new womanhood, desired and abandoned, creating life while surrounded by endings. The loneliness was hardest at doctor's appointments, watching couples hold hands during ultrasounds while she clutched her own fingers together. The technician's perpetual question, "Is the father joining us today?" became a practiced wound. "It's just me," she would answer, chin lifted. "What's the bravest thing you've ever done when everyone expected you to break? Tell me how you found strength when the world thought you were weak." At night, she read pregnancy books aloud, letting her voice fill the empty apartment. "Your daddy made a mistake," she sometimes told her belly, "but I won't make you pay for it." She had just entered her third trimester when Mrs. Jackson knocked with an envelope that had arrived by courier. Inside, a check from her father's attorney. Not reconciliation, just calculated distance management. Enough money to handle the situation discreetly with a non-disclosure agreement attached. Naomi tore both to pieces. The doctor's expression changed when he studied the ultrasound, calling in a colleague who pointed at the screen with growing excitement. "Ms. Walker, are twins common in your family?" Naomi shook her head, confused. The doctor's smile widened. "Well, congratulations. You're carrying multiples. And from what I'm seeing, it's not twins." Labor lasted 26 hours, but the gasps that filled the delivery room weren't from her pain, but from the revelation that emerged with each perfect child. 3 babies whose features told a truth no paternity test would ever need to confirm. "Push, Ms. Walker." The doctor's voice seemed to come from miles away as Naomi gripped the rails of the hospital bed. No hand to hold, no partner to coach her breathing, just a labor nurse counting contractions and her own determination carrying her through waves of pain. The first cry pierced the room at 3:17 a.m. "It's a boy." The doctor lifted a squirming, red-faced infant. Before Naomi could fully process this miracle, contractions resumed. "There's still 2 more, the nurse reminded her. "You're doing great." By 4:05 a.m., 3 identical boys lay in warming basins beside her bed, each a tiny mirror image of Thomas, from the distinctive cleft in their chins to the shape of their ears. The nurses exchanged glances, clearly noting the resemblance to someone they didn't know. "Identical triplets," the doctor explained, genuine awe in his voice. "Extremely rare. The eggs split 3 ways. Less than 200 cases worldwide each year." "They're beautiful," Naomi whispered, exhaustion giving way to fierce love as they placed the first swaddled bundle against her chest. 3 identical cribs lined the wall of her bedroom, moonlight casting gentle shadows across 3 sleeping faces that echoed Thomas in every feature, from the distinctive shape of their eyes to the cleft in their tiny chins. The days blurred into an endless cycle of feedings, diaper changes, and brief moments of sleep. Mrs. Jackson brought casseroles and stayed occasionally to hold a baby while Naomi showered. Without asking, the older woman began referring to herself as Grandma Joyce to the triplets. Her body, stretched and changed by carrying 3 lives, slowly healed. The curve of her hips remained wider, her breasts fuller, physical reminders of transformation. Sometimes, in rare, quiet moments, she remembered Thomas's touch, how he'd traced her body with appreciation before everything fell apart. Those memories now felt like they belonged to another woman, another life. In the hospital photos, taken by a kind nurse, Naomi held all 3 boys against her chest, their tiny features unmistakable. After weeks of deliberation, she posted a single image to Instagram with a caption carefully crafted, introducing Elijah, Isaiah, and Isaac Walker. Identical triplets run in the father's family. Hashtag blessed 3 times. Has life ever given you undeniable proof that you were right when everyone thought you were wrong? Share your vindication story in the comments below. She added no tags, no location, but she knew how quickly information traveled. Her former Atlanta friends, Thomas's business associates, family connections, someone would ensure the image reached Miami. The birth announcement went viral faster than she anticipated. Her simple photo of 3 newborns with the caption, "Identical triplets run in the father's family," reached Atlanta within hours. By evening, her phone lit up with a number she deleted months ago. Thomas's mother, calling to demand what Naomi had waited 9 months to say. Thomas scrolled through photos of the triplets every night for months, studying features he recognized from childhood photos of himself, while the corporate empire his family built began crumbling around him. The first time he saw the image, Thomas dropped his phone. 3 perfect faces, miniature versions of himself, stared back from his screen. His assistant had forwarded the post with a simple note. "Sir, you should see this." For weeks, he told himself the resemblance was coincidence. Genetics played strange tricks. But as more photos appeared on mutual friends' accounts, the truth became unavoidable. The cleft chin all Reeve men shared. The distinctive eyebrow arch his grandfather had passed down. Even the small birthmark near the hairline. All 3 boys had it, just like him. In his Miami penthouse, blue light from his laptop illuminated empty whiskey glasses as dawn broke over the ocean. Thomas had spent another night comparing baby photos, tracing identical expressions across 4 faces, his 3 children and his own childhood image. He called his mother first. "Did you know?" "Know what, darling?" Her voice held the practiced innocence he recognized from childhood disasters. That Naomi was carrying triplets. "My triplets." The silence told him everything. He hired private investigators to locate her. Reports came back, a modest apartment in Birmingham, remote tech work, no dating, no social life beyond her children, no complaints to media about the Reeve family despite multiple offers. The longing hit him at odd moments, watching the sunset from his office and remembering how she'd looked in that exact light. Waking from dreams where her body pressed against his, her laugh in his ear, only to find cold sheets beside him. Women his mother introduced at charity events seemed flat, uninteresting. lacking the sharp intelligence and quiet confidence that had drawn him to Naomi. He drafted messages he never sent, composed emails he deleted. Pride and shame waged war inside him, neither allowing him to make the call that might begin healing what he'd broken. His assistant interrupted one such moment of regret. "Sir, the FBI just arrived in the lobby. They're asking for financial records from the Cayman subsidiary. Would you keep photos of someone who destroyed your trust? Or would you erase every trace of them? Tell me how you handle the digital ghosts of relationships past." The federal investigation blindsided everyone. Allegations of tax fraud, money laundering, and securities violations. Records requested from departments Thomas barely oversaw. Projects his father and uncle had managed personally. Private accounts Thomas hadn't known existed. His legal team worked through nights preparing defense strategies. Board members demanded explanations he couldn't provide. The stock price dropped 20% in a single day. "Thomas, this is catastrophic," his father shouted during an emergency meeting. "Everything we built could disappear." He barely heard the words, distracted by a notification on his phone. Another photo of the triplets, now sitting up, matching expressions of curiosity as they examined something beyond the camera's view. The day Thomas finally gathered courage to fly to Birmingham, his phone exploded with alerts. The FBI had just entered Reeve Technologies' headquarters with warrants. The corporate scandal that would destroy everything had begun, and only one person possessed the evidence to save them: the woman he had abandoned when she needed him most. While Naomi bathed 3 babbling toddlers in a cramped Birmingham bathroom, federal agents were seizing servers containing code she'd helped develop. Code that now stood at the center of a billion-dollar fraud investigation. Splash goes the boat. Naomi laughed as Isaiah smacked the water, soaking her t-shirt. All 3 boys giggled, dark curls plastered to their foreheads. At 18 months, they were walking, babbling, and developing personalities as distinct as their faces were identical. She wrapped them in towels, one by one, pressing kisses to damp heads. Bedtime routine, pajamas, story, lullaby. By 8 o'clock, 3 cribs held sleeping boys, leaving Naomi her only quiet hours of the day. She opened her laptop, checking overnight coding tasks for her remote job. A news alert flashed across her screen. Reeve Technologies under federal investigation. Fraud charges expected. Her stomach dropped. The article detailed allegations focused on proprietary software developed for overseas banking clients. Code she had helped design during her internship before everything fell apart. Her budget TV flickered with breaking news. The Reeve family emerging from federal court, faces grim beneath expensive sunglasses, reporters shouting questions about fraud that would have seemed impossible when she had shared their dinner table. Thomas looked thinner, strain evident even through the grainy broadcast. His father appeared physically smaller, diminished by scandal. The mother who had once regarded Naomi with barely disguised disdain now clung to her son's arm, eyes darting nervously at cameras. For days, Naomi watched the story unfold between diaper changes and feedings. The company's stock plummeted. Former executives gave anonymous interviews suggesting wrongdoing went back years. The FBI focused on offshore accounts and modified code that laundered transactions through seemingly legitimate channels. She recognized the technical descriptions of the software. She had written parts of it herself, though the modifications described in the news had happened after her departure. The original code had been legitimate. Someone had corrupted it. Her body had fully recovered from childbirth, strength returning with each month of carrying 3 growing boys. She caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Hair pulled back, simple clothes, eyes older but clearer. Different from the polished Atlanta socialite she'd been, more substantial somehow. Last week, a divorced neighbor had asked her to dinner. She'd accepted, more from curiosity than interest. The evening proved pleasant but empty. No spark, no connection. The comparison to what she'd shared with Thomas was unfair but unavoidable. Have you ever watched someone who hurt you face their own struggles? Did you feel satisfaction, pity, or something more complicated? Share your thoughts below. She was putting the boys to bed when Mrs. Jackson knocked, whispering about a man in a suit at the door. "Wanting to call the police, honey? He looks expensive but nervous." Naomi peeked through the curtain. Not Thomas. Older, grayer, with the unmistakable bearing of a corporate attorney. The knock on her door came at midnight. Not Thomas as she briefly feared, but a lawyer representing his family's company. "Ms. Walker, we have reason to believe you possess information critical to our defense." She almost closed the door until he added, "The FBI is also looking for you. If you don't talk to the Reeves first, you might find yourself implicated." She found the forgotten flash drive in a jewelry box, a tiny device containing enough corporate secrets to either save the Reeve family legacy or ensure they spent decades in federal prison. After the lawyer left, Naomi sat motionless on her couch, mind racing. Implicated? How could she be involved in fraud that happened after she left? She dialed her old mentor from Silicon Valley, now a cybersecurity consultant. Hypothetically, she began, "If someone modified code I wrote years ago to do something illegal, could I be liable?" His answer wasn't comforting. "Depends who knew what when. If you have original versions showing your code was legitimate, keep them safe. They're your only protection." The jewelry box had traveled with her from Atlanta, a rosewood container holding the few pieces she hadn't pawned for living expenses. Beneath her mother's pearl earrings and a silver bracelet from college graduation lay a small black flash drive, labeled simply RT Backup. Standard procedure at Reeve Technologies. Developers kept backups of completed projects. She had forgotten this copy existed, a snapshot of the banking software before she left, before anyone corrupted it. Her laptop hummed as the drive contents loaded. Timestamps and digital signatures on the files proved their authenticity. Evidence showing the original code performed legitimate functions. More importantly, documentation showed who had access after her departure, including approval chains for subsequent modifications. The names in those approval chains explained everything. Thomas's father and uncle repeatedly authorizing changes to sections that handled transaction verification. Her lawyer's office smelled of leather and authority. The flash drive looking insignificant on the massive mahogany desk as they discussed its contents. Documents proving either Thomas's innocence or his complicity, depending on how the evidence was presented. "This drive is digital dynamite," her attorney concluded, an older woman who had taken Naomi's case at reduced rates. "It proves the original code was legitimate and identifies who authorized the illegal modifications. The Reeves will want this badly. And the FBI? They'll want it worse." Her attorney leaned forward. "You're in a powerful position, Ms. Walker. These files prove your innocence while potentially condemning the elder Reeves. The question is, what do you want? What did she want?" Revenge seemed hollow with 3 little boys who deserved to know their father's family. Justice mattered, but so did protecting her children's future. The business suit she wore to the attorney's office felt strange after months of leggings and t-shirts, a costume from her previous life. Yet something about reclaiming this professional persona, discussing strategy instead of diaper brands, awakened parts of herself she had set aside. If you held the power to help or harm someone who betrayed you, what would guide your decision? Revenge? Justice? Forgiveness? Comment with what you choose. That night, watching her son sleep, Naomi made her decision. Thomas hadn't been named in any documents as knowing about the fraud. His father and uncle had kept him focused on marketing and expansion while they handled financial details. If Thomas was truly innocent of wrongdoing, shouldn't he have the chance to know his children? Her lawyer's expression remained neutral as she outlined her terms. "I don't want money," she said, voice unwavering. "I want 3 things: public acknowledgement of the children, full legal paternity, and," she paused, considering the last condition carefully, "I want Thomas himself to ask for my help. Not his lawyers, not his family. Him." 24 hours after she named her terms, Thomas Reeves stood in the rain outside her apartment building. No umbrella, no security, looking nothing like the powerful heir who had once discarded her with a text message. Naomi spotted him through her kitchen window, expensive suit darkened with rain, hair plastered to his forehead. He checked his phone, then looked up at the building, uncertainty replacing the confidence she remembered. "Who's that man?" Isaiah asked, pointing a chubby finger at the window. All three boys clustered around her legs, curious about the stranger. "Someone I used to know," she answered, heart hammering against her ribs. She let him stand in the downpour for 10 full minutes while she watched from the window. 3 curious toddlers pressed against her legs before buzzing him in. His expensive suit darkened with rain, hair plastered to his forehead, power stripped away by weather and waiting. When a knock finally came, she opened the door without greeting. Thomas stood, dripping on her welcome mat, eyes moving first to her face, then to the 3 identical boys peering from behind her legs. The silence stretched between them. 2 years of absence, accusations, and pain compressed into a single moment. The boys, usually boisterous, seemed to sense the importance of this strange man's arrival, clinging to their mother while studying him with curious eyes. "You have my chin," Thomas finally said, his voice rough with emotion as he crouched to their level. "All 3 of you. That's the first thing you have to say to me," Naomi asked, arms crossed. He stood, water still dripping from his clothes. "I was wrong. Completely, inexcusably wrong. I should have trusted you. I should have opened that envelope. I should have," his voice broke. "They're beautiful, Naomi." She invited him inside with a gesture, not quite ready for words. The apartment felt cramped with his presence, his height, his breadth, the weight of their history filling every corner. The boys warmed to him quickly, fascinated by this new person who looked oddly familiar. Elijah brought him a toy car. Isaiah showed him a picture book. Isaac simply stared, thumb in mouth, assessing. Thomas answered her lawyer's questions while the boys played nearby. Yes, he would acknowledge paternity publicly. Yes, he would provide financial support. Yes, he had the evidence she requested about the company fraud. His father and uncle had kept him in the dark deliberately. "They knew I wouldn't approve," Thomas explained, watching the Triplets stack blocks on the rug. "The offshore accounts, the co-modifications, it all happened in departments I never directly managed." When his hand accidentally brushed hers reaching for documents, electricity shot through her body, unwelcome reminder of chemistry that hadn't died with trust. She withdrew quickly, maintaining physical distance that contradicted the intimate reality of 3 children they shared. Have you ever been in a position where someone who once had all the power suddenly needed something from you? How did it feel to have the tables turned? Share your experience. As legal papers were signed establishing paternity, Thomas reached for her hand across the lawyer's desk. "The evidence isn't all I came for," he said, voice low enough that only she could hear. "I need to know why your father told me." Before he could finish, her phone rang with news that would force them together longer than either had planned. The Triplets daycare had been surrounded by paparazzi. She chose a simple black dress for the day. She would enter Reeve Technologies as neither victim nor villain, but as the woman who held their future in her hands, with 3 small children whose DNA matched the company's heir. The media frenzy erupted overnight. Photos of Thomas visiting Naomi's apartment sparked speculation, followed by leaked court documents confirming the Triplets' paternity. Morning shows debated the scandal, while stock prices stabilized on rumors of resolution. Naomi studied her reflection as she prepared. The black dress, purchased on sale at a department store, fit her post-pregnancy body perfectly. Simple pearl earrings, hair pulled into a sleek bun, professional makeup covering any trace of sleepless nights. "You don't have to do this," her lawyer reminded her. "We could submit the evidence remotely." "I want them to see me," Naomi replied. "To see us." Thomas arranged everything: private jet to Miami, security detail, childcare specialists to help with the Triplets during meetings. The boys, dressed in matching blue outfits, babbled excitedly about the airplane ride, too young to understand stakes. The corporate headquarters gleamed with glass and privilege, employees staring openly as Naomi walked through the lobby, a toddler on each hand while Thomas carried the third. Security guards cleared their path to the executive elevator. "Ready?" Thomas asked as the elevator climbed toward the executive floor. She nodded, squeezing the boy's hands. They need to see what their lies cost. The hushed boardroom with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Miami's coastline fell completely silent as the elevator doors opened, revealing Naomi holding hands with two toddlers while the third rested on her hip. Three perfect miniatures of the man whose name adorned the building. Board members and executives froze mid-conversation. Thomas's mother gasped audibly. His father half rose from his chair, color draining from his face at the unmistakable evidence before him. "Gentlemen, ladies," Thomas began formally. "I'd like to introduce Naomi Walker and our sons, Elijah, Isaiah, and Isaac." The silence broke as the boys, oblivious to tension, began exploring the room with toddler curiosity. Isaac pointed at Thomas's father, declaring, "Look," with perfect innocence. Naomi placed her evidence on the polished table. The flash drive, printed documentation, testimony from former developers. The material definitively proved that Thomas had no knowledge of the financial crimes, while clearly implicating his father and uncle. "This information goes to the FBI tomorrow," she stated clearly, "unless a full confession and resignation happens today." Thomas's father began a blustering denial until his brother placed a restraining hand on his arm. "It's over, Richard. She has everything. What would you wear to face the people who once discarded you? Would you choose power, revenge, or was something unexpected? Tell me your power outfit in the comments." The admission, when it finally came, stunned the board. Years of financial manipulation, modified code, offshore accounts. Thomas stood beside Naomi, physically representing their united position. Whenever his hand brushed against her back, warmth spread through her body, unwanted reminder of attraction still simmering beneath anger. The evidence cleared Thomas, but implicated his father and uncle in ways no one had anticipated. As security escorted the disgraced men from the building, Thomas's mother approached Naomi with tears streaming down her face. "She told me you were unfaithful," she whispered, pointing to Thomas's cousin who had always wanted his position. "I believed her because it was easier than accepting my son had chosen someone I couldn't control." The revelation shook Thomas visibly, but Naomi had suspected the truth all along. While the business world buzzed about the Reeve family scandal, Thomas and Naomi sat in a quiet hotel suite having the conversation they should have had 2 years earlier, with 3 sleeping children as witnesses to a truth that could no longer be denied. The boys had crashed after the excitement of the day, 3 identical forms breathing softly in the suite's second bedroom. Naomi perched on the edge of the sofa, maintaining careful distance from Thomas as Miami lights sparkled beyond the windows. "I need to understand everything," she said. "No more secrets." Thomas loosened his tie, exhaustion evident in the slump of his shoulders. "My cousin Eliza always wanted my position. She'd been feeding my mother information for years, twisted versions of everything you did or said. But why did you believe them so easily?" The question that had haunted her for 2 years. "Because," he hesitated, looking away, "because deep down, I never felt worthy of you. You were brilliant, beautiful, authentic. I kept waiting for you to realize you could do better." Miami lights sparkled beyond the hotel suite windows, casting both their faces in alternating shadow and illumination as truth flowed between them, painful but necessary, like lancing a wound that had festered too long. "So, when my mother showed me photos of you with a man, claiming he was your ex, let me guess, lunch meetings with my project manager from Silicon Valley." Naomi shook her head. "The black man you assumed was my lover was gay and married, Thomas." He flinched. "I didn't ask questions I should have asked. I defaulted to my family's judgment instead of trusting what I knew about you." "And my father? What exactly did he tell you?" Thomas's expression darkened. "That you had confessed to him, that the baby might not be mine, that he was heartbroken by your betrayal." Naomi's laugh held no humor. "The perfect strategy. He never accepted our relationship. A daughter dating outside her race, embarrassing him in front of his country club friends. The weight of manipulation hung between them. How easily others had exploited their insecurities, how quickly trust had collapsed under pressure. I should have opened the envelope with the paternity test, Thomas admitted, voice breaking. Every day since I saw their faces, I've hated myself for that moment. Naomi watched him. This man she had loved, whose children she had carried, whose rejection had nearly broken her. The physical pull remained despite everything, an awareness that intensified in the intimate hotel setting. When is an apology enough? When is it not? What would someone have to do to earn your forgiveness after betraying your trust? Share your thoughts below. I'm sorry, Thomas said finally, moving to kneel before her. Not just for believing lies, but for failing you when you needed me most. For missing their birth, their first words, their first steps. For making you face everything alone when you should have had a partner beside you. Infertile wealthy CEO discovers his secretary is virgin after one night of passion. She gave him twins. She'd been invisible for 3 years, filing his failures and scheduling his disappointments, until the night she became the only witness to his breakdown. Have you ever worked for someone who never truly saw you until they needed you most? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The richest man in Atlanta stared at medical results that made him poorer than any homeless person on the street, because money can't buy what his body refused to give. Have you ever felt completely powerless despite having everything? When did you last receive news that shattered everything you thought you knew about yourself? Dr. Morrison's voice cut through the silence like a blade. The tests are conclusive, Mr. Caldwell. Your sperm count is virtually 0. Natural conception is impossible. Ethan's knuckles went white against the leather chair. 34 years old, net worth approaching 9 figures, CEO of the largest real estate empire in the Southeast, and completely, utterly broken where it mattered most. The mahogany boardroom stretched before him like a battlefield when he returned to Caldwell Enterprises. Portraits of his ancestors watched from gilded frames as shareholders discussed bloodlines and succession with the casual cruelty of people who never doubted their own fertility. The Dubai expansion requires family continuity. His father's voice boomed across the polished table. Investors want assurance the Caldwell name will endure. 3 failed relationships, countless nights of trying, years of secretly scheduling around ovulation cycles and fertility windows, all leading to this moment. Sitting in a room full of people planning his legacy while his body refused to create one. Ethan, his father's sharp tone demanded attention. The timeline for succession planning. 2 years, he lied smoothly, the words tasting like ash. 2 years to figure out how to admit that the mighty Caldwell bloodline might end with him. The meeting dragged on. Profit margins, market projections, future acquisitions, all meaningless when you're the last domino in a century-long chain, destined to fall without pushing another forward. By evening, the office emptied except for the hum of computers and the distant whisper of money being made. Ethan loosened his tie, watching Atlanta's skyline blur through floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below like a kingdom he'd built but couldn't pass on. His reflection stared back from the dark glass, successful, commanding, hollow. Everything his father had shaped him to be, except the one thing that actually mattered. As he loosened his tie in the empty office, watching Atlanta's skyline blur through floor-to-ceiling windows, he didn't notice his secretary working late again, or the way she glanced up when his confident mask finally slipped. She'd been invisible for 3 years, filing his failures and scheduling his disappointments, until the night she became the only witness to his breakdown. Have you ever worked for someone who never truly saw you until they needed you most? When did invisibility become your superpower? Jasmine Brooks had perfected the art of being essential while remaining unseen. 3 years of answering his calls, managing his calendar, keeping his secrets. 3 years of watching Ethan Caldwell command rooms full of powerful men while she organized the chaos behind his success. The 32nd floor hummed with the white noise of success. Air conditioning, computers, the distant whisper of money being made. But tonight it felt hollow, like a museum of ambition where she was the only living thing left. Her Birmingham accent had softened during her years in Atlanta, but it still colored her voice when she was tired. Tonight, exhaustion weighed heavy as she sorted through the medical bills he thought he'd hidden from her. Fertility specialists, reproductive endocrinologists, a paper trail of hope that led nowhere. She'd grown up in a house where privacy was luxury they couldn't afford. Thin walls meant everyone's business became family business. So when her boss started taking mysterious afternoon appointments and returning with the look of a man who'd been gutted, she noticed. The elevator chimed. Jasmine glanced up to see Ethan walking toward his office, shoulders carrying more weight than usual. His typical commanding presence had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. Through the glass walls of his office, she watched him pour 3 fingers of bourbon, then pour it back and reach for the bottle again. His hands shook slightly as he loosened his tie, staring out at the city like it had personally betrayed him. She'd been raised to mind her business, but she'd also been raised to help people who were hurting. And Ethan Caldwell was definitely hurting. Jasmine knocked softly on his door, holding a steaming cup of coffee. "Thought you might need this." He looked up, surprised to find her still there. For a moment, his carefully constructed walls wavered. "Jasmine, you should go home. It's late. So should you." She set the coffee on his desk, close enough that her perfume, something warm and understated, drifted between them. "Rough day." A bitter laugh escaped him. "You could say that." She studied his face, really looked at him, not the CEO version, but the man underneath. "Want to talk about it? I don't pay you to be my therapist. You don't pay me to work past 9 either, but here we are." When she whispered, "You don't have to carry everything alone," something shifted in his chest. For the first time in years, Ethan Caldwell looked at Jasmine Brooks, really looked, and wondered how he'd missed the fire burning behind those quiet eyes. She'd guarded her innocence for 26 years like a treasure, until the night she offered it freely to a man who thought he had nothing left to give. When was the last time you made a choice purely from the heart, knowing it might change everything? Have you ever been someone's first? The corporate party buzzed with Atlanta's elite, but Ethan felt more isolated than ever. Champagne flutes clinked around him while he nursed bourbon and avoided conversations about family plans and future generations. Jasmine moved through the crowd like she belonged, her simple black dress elegant against the backdrop of designer gowns and inherited jewelry. She'd grown up with nothing but carried herself with dignity that money couldn't buy. "You're brooding," she said, appearing beside him at the bar. "I'm networking," he lied. "You're hiding." The truth of it hit him harder than the alcohol. "Maybe I am." When the party finally ended, she insisted on helping him to his penthouse. Professional concern, she claimed, but her hand lingered on his arm as they rode the elevator up 30 floors. Rain drummed against the windows of his penthouse as she stepped closer. Her reflection multiplied in the dark glass. One woman becoming many, all of them choosing him in this moment when he felt most broken. "I know about the medical appointments," she said quietly. His jaw tightened. "It's not your concern. It is when it's eating you alive. You don't understand. I understand that you're the strongest man I know, and watching you break is breaking me too." The confession hung between them like electricity. Before he could respond, she was closer, her palm flat against his chest where his heart hammered against his ribs. "Jasmine, I'm not asking for promises," she whispered. "I'm not asking for forever, but I'm asking you to stop carrying this alone." When her lips touched his, soft and uncertain, something inside him shattered. Not broke, shattered completely, leaving room for something new to grow. Her inexperience was obvious in the hesitant way she kissed him, the tremor in her hands as she unbuttoned his shirt. But her choice was clear, deliberate, powerful. "Are you sure?" he asked against her mouth. "I've never been more sure of anything." He carried her to his bedroom, where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city lights like stars. She was gentle curves and warm skin, nervous laughter and breathless gasps. When he realized she was a virgin, he nearly stopped. "Please," she whispered, "let me choose this. Let me choose you." So he did, slowly, carefully, worshipfully, taking her innocence like the gift it was, giving her tenderness in return. her soft cries of pleasure mixed with the rain outside, creating a symphony that rewrote everything he thought he knew about connection. Afterward, she curled against his side, tracing patterns on his chest. "No regrets," she murmured, as if reading his mind. But when morning painted the city gold, reality crashed back. The impossible situation, the power dynamic, the professional complications. As dawn painted the city gold, she slipped from his bed like a secret. 3 weeks later, staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test, Jasmine realized some secrets refused to stay buried. The word impossible had ruled his life for years, until the day his secretary proved that miracles don't follow medical textbooks. How do you tell someone news that will change both your lives forever? Have you ever carried a secret that felt too big for your body? The pregnancy test sat on Jasmine's bathroom counter like a live grenade. 2 pink lines, clear as daylight, impossible as flying. She'd taken 3 more tests. Same result. Called the doctor's office. Scheduled an appointment. Sat in the waiting room, surrounded by couples holding hands and discussing baby names while she calculated how to destroy 2 lives with 7 simple words. "I'm pregnant, and the baby is yours." Back at the office, Ethan had retreated into his professional shell. Polite, distant, treating their night together like a temporary lapse in judgment that professional courtesy would erase. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell," she said, delivering his coffee with steady hands despite the chaos in her chest. "Morning, Jasmine. The Morrison files? On your desk. 3 weeks of this." 3 weeks of pretending her world hadn't shifted on its axis while he pretended nothing had happened at all. She typed her resignation letter 17 times. Each version sounded more pathetic than the last. How do you explain leaving without explaining why? How do you quit the best job you've ever had because you made one beautiful, impossible mistake? The doctor's appointment confirmed what she already knew. 8 weeks along, healthy, due in February. The ultrasound tech had smiled when she mentioned twins ran in her family, making a joke about hoping for one miracle at a time. If only she knew. Jasmine sat in her car in the hospital parking garage, staring at the ultrasound photos. 2 tiny heartbeats, 2 impossible lives growing inside her. 2 miracles that medical science said couldn't exist. She couldn't keep this secret, but telling him meant admitting she'd fallen for a man who saw their night as a mistake. It meant watching him question her motives, her integrity, her honesty about everything. But these babies deserved better than a mother too scared to fight for them. His corner office suddenly felt smaller when she walked in, the walls pressing closer as words hung between them like smoke from a fired gun. Pregnant wasn't just a word, it was a revolution. "Mr. Caldwell, I need to speak with you. Privately." He glanced up from his computer, reading something in her expression that made him close the laptop. "Of course. Sit." She remained standing. If she sat down, she might lose her nerve. "I'm pregnant." The words hit the air between them like a physical force. His face went completely blank. Not angry, not shocked, just empty. "I see." His voice was carefully controlled. "And the father?" "You." Silence stretched between them, filled with the hum of air conditioning and the distant sounds of Atlanta traffic 32 floors below. "That's impossible." "I know. Jasmine, I'm sterile. Completely infertile." The doctors were very clear. "I know what the doctors said." She reached into her purse, pulled out the ultrasound photos, and placed them on his desk. But apparently your body didn't get the memo. When she placed the ultrasound image on his desk, 2 tiny heartbeats visible in black and white. Ethan's hand trembled as he reached for his phone. The fertility specialist had some explaining to do. Science said it was impossible. Family said it was scandalous. But the growing life in her belly said sometimes the universe writes its own rules. Have you ever felt caught between 2 worlds that both claim to know what's best for you? When did family expectations clash with your heart? Dr. Morrison's office felt smaller the second time around, cramped with tension and disbelief. Ethan sat rigid in the leather chair, while Jasmine perched on the examination table, ultrasound gel still drying on her stomach. "The pregnancy is definitely yours," Dr. Morrison said, consulting his charts. DNA markers confirm paternity. But I'll be honest, Mr. Caldwell, this challenges everything we know about your condition. Challenges. Ethan's voice was deadly quiet. Doctor, you told me natural conception was impossible. 0% chance. Those were your exact words. And based on your previous tests, that assessment was accurate. But human reproduction isn't always predictable. Extreme emotional or physical stress can sometimes trigger temporary changes in hormone production. It's rare but documented. Jasmine watched emotions play across Ethan's face: confusion, hope, fear, anger. So, I was never really sterile? You were functionally sterile during our testing period. But clearly something changed. Dr. Morrison turned to Jasmine. Have you told your family? The question hit like a physical blow. Her family, her mother, who'd raised 4 children on waitress tips and prayer. Her brothers, who'd sacrificed college funds so she could move to Atlanta. Her community, where her success was everyone's pride and her mistakes would be everyone's shame. Not yet, she whispered. The drive to Birmingham felt longer than usual. Ethan had insisted on coming, partly for support, partly because his family would hear about the pregnancy soon enough, and he preferred delivering news to having it delivered for him. The Caldwell family mansion loomed over Buckhead like a monument to judgment, its columned facade hiding generations of secrets that made his current scandal seem almost quaint. But first, her family. Her mother's house in Birmingham looked smaller than she remembered. The chain-link fence and patchy lawn, a sharp contrast to Ethan's world of manicure perfection. You sure about this? He asked as they sat in his Mercedes, drawing stares from neighbors. No, but we're doing it anyway. Her mother, Viola, answered the door in her work uniform. She'd picked up a double shift at the diner to help pay for Jasmine's brother's textbooks. Her eyes went wide, seeing Ethan, then narrowed as she processed what his presence might mean. Mama, we need to talk. The living room filled with family within minutes. News traveled fast in the Brooks household. Her brothers, Marcus and Devin, flanked the couch like sentries. Her youngest sister, Keisha, home from community college, sat cross-legged on the carpet. I'm pregnant, Jasmine said without preamble. Silence. Then eruption. Who's the daddy? Marcus demanded, shooting daggers at Ethan. Is it his? Viola's voice was carefully controlled, but Jasmine heard the disappointment underneath. Yes, Mama, it's his. And what's he planning to do about it? Devin stood up, all 6'3" of protective older brother energy. Ethan, to his credit, didn't flinch. I'm planning to take care of both Jasmine and the baby. Babies, actually. She's carrying twins. The room exploded again. Twins. Impossible babies. A white CEO and their Jasmine, whose scholarships and determination had lifted her out of poverty only to land her in a scandal that would follow her forever. You sleeping with your boss now? Keisha's question cut deepest because it came without judgment, just curiosity. It's complicated, Jasmine said weakly. No, it's not, Viola said firmly. It's simple. You're having babies with a man who's not your husband. Everything else is just details. But when Ethan spoke, his voice was steady and sure. Mrs. Brooks, I know this isn't ideal, but I care about your daughter. These babies were a surprise to both of us, but they're not unwanted. Care about her? Marcus laughed bitterly. Man, you don't even know her. She's been working for you 3 years, and this is the first time you've been in her neighborhood. The accusation hung heavy because it was true. Ethan knew Jasmine's efficiency, her professionalism, her dedication to her job. But he was only beginning to discover who she was beyond his office walls. You're right, Ethan admitted, but I'm learning, and I intend to keep learning. When they finally left Birmingham, both were exhausted by the weight of family expectations and complicated emotions. The drive back to Atlanta was quiet until Jasmine spoke. Your family's going to be worse, aren't they? Ethan's laugh was bitter. My father's already planning damage control strategies. My mother's probably researching boarding schools in Switzerland. And my grandfather's likely updating his will. The private investigator's report landed on his father's desk with a thud that echoed through 3 generations of Caldwell pride. Jasmine Brooks wasn't just carrying impossible twins. She was carrying the future of their empire. Power struggles aren't fought with fists in boardrooms. They're fought with whispers, leaked stories, and the kind of ammunition that destroys reputations before breakfast. When did you realize that protecting someone you care about meant fighting battles you never expected? Share a moment when love made you braver. The boardroom felt like a war zone dressed in mahogany and marble. Ethan faced 12 hostile stares across the polished conference table while his father presided like a judge at an execution. Explain to me how a sterile man fathers twins. Charles Caldwell's voice cut through the silence like broken glass. Medical anomaly, Ethan replied evenly. Dr. Morrison documented everything. Medical anomaly or medical malpractice? Board member Harrison Webb leaned forward, shark-like. Either way, it's a liability nightmare. The liability is a PR disaster waiting to happen, added Patricia Morse, the company's longest-serving director. CEO knocks up his secretary? The media will destroy us. Jasmine sat in her apartment, staring at the scattered contents of her purse across her coffee table. Someone had broken in while she was at work. Nothing valuable taken, but everything searched. Her personal papers, photographs, even her high school yearbook, all rifled through like evidence at a crime scene. Her hands shook as she called Ethan. They were in my apartment. Who? His proximity sent warmth through her body. Unwelcome reminder of feelings she'd locked away for survival. She could smell his cologne, see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, feel the magnetic pull that had always existed between them. Dawn was breaking when Thomas finally said what she'd waited years to hear, a complete apology without excuses. As silence settled between them, Naomi faced her most difficult decision yet. I forgive you, she said finally, watching his expression shift to hope. But that doesn't mean I trust you, and it certainly doesn't mean I'll take you back. His response would determine everything that followed. The press conference was Thomas's idea, a public acknowledgement of his children, his mistakes, and his intentions to make amends, all broadcast live while Naomi watched from behind the cameras, measuring his words against the private promises he'd made. News trucks lined the street outside Reeve Technologies headquarters. Inside, Naomi settled the boys with coloring books in a conference room, corporate assistants hovering nearby, clearly enchanted by the triplets despite instructions to maintain professional distance. Ready? Thomas appeared in the doorway, freshly pressed suit emphasizing the weight he'd regained since taking control of the company. Are you? She countered, straightening his tie automatically before catching herself. His smile acknowledged the familiar gesture. I've never been more certain of anything. She watched on a monitor as Thomas approached the podium, cameras flashing. The statement began with business, his father and uncle's guilty pleas, corporate restructuring, ethics committees established. Then his voice softened. On a personal note, he continued, many of you have speculated about my recent visits to Birmingham. Today, I'm here to acknowledge what some already know. I'm the father of 3 remarkable boys. Camera flashes exploded like fireflies as Thomas approached the forest of microphones, 3 booster seats visible in the back of his car, a deliberate signal that his priorities had fundamentally changed from corporate power to family responsibility. 2 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I allowed others to poison my relationship with Naomi Walker, the mother of my children. I trusted gossip over the woman I loved. I missed the birth of my sons in their first steps because of pride and poor judgment. Naomi's breath caught in her throat. They had agreed he would acknowledge paternity, but this public contrition went beyond their arrangement. While I cannot reclaim lost time, I am committed to being the father my sons deserve and rebuilding trust with their remarkable mother, who raised them alone while I was blind to the truth. Questions followed, personal, probing, occasionally hostile. Thomas fielded each with calm dignity, refusing to blame others for his choices while making clear the broader manipulation that had occurred. What actions speak louder than words when someone is trying to earn back your trust? What would you need to see to believe someone has truly changed? Tell me in the comments. After the conference, they established routines. Weekends in Miami, video calls every evening, child support deposited without being asked. Thomas flying to Birmingham for doctor appointments and preschool tours. The boys warmed to him quickly, his features so familiar to them somehow. Watching them together, Thomas teaching Isaac to tie shoes, helping Elijah build block towers, reading to Isaiah, awakened complicated emotions in Naomi. Gratitude mixed with lingering hurt. Attraction tangled with caution. The tabloid headline screamed across her phone screen. Reeve Ayer's ex-fiancé considering reconciliation? Alongside photos of them exchanging the children, expressions caught in an unguarded moment. Before she could process her reaction, a text from her father appeared. The first contact since he'd ordered her from his home. "We need to talk about the family trust." Her father's Buckhead mansion looked exactly the same. Imposing columns, manicured lawns, security cameras tracking her approach. But Naomi had changed too profoundly to fear the rejection that once shattered her world. Thomas insisted on accompanying her. "You shouldn't face him alone." "I've faced worse alone," she reminded him, but accepted his presence for the boys' sake. They deserved to know all their grandparents, even the difficult ones. Security guards recognized her car, gates swinging open without intercom verification. Her stomach tightened as they pulled into the circular driveway where she had once stood in the rain, disowned and desperate. "You okay?" Thomas reached across the console, not quite touching her hand. "Just memories." She straightened her shoulders. "Let's get this over with." Charles Walker stood in the doorway, older than she remembered, hair grayer at the temples. His expression remained guarded as she approached with a child on each hand, Thomas carrying the third. "So it's true," her father said, eyes moving over the triplets. "They're unmistakable. This is Elijah, Isaiah, and Isaac," Naomi introduced, voice steady. "Boys, this is your grandfather." The formal dining room, where she'd once been judged insufficient now, held 3 high chairs alongside fine china. The contrast between old wealth and new life, as striking as the resemblance between Thomas and the children everyone had once denied. Her stepmother appeared, awkward but trying. Thomas answered Charles's probing questions about the company's scandal with practiced diplomacy. The children, sensing tension, remained unusually subdued until dessert arrived. Ice cream breaking the fragile peace as they attacked it with typical toddler enthusiasm. "The trust," Charles finally mentioned as coffee was served. "Your mother established it before she died. I can't touch it, even if I wanted to." With the boys' paternity confirmed, they're entitled to their share. Naomi absorbed this information calmly. "I didn't come for money." "Why did you come?" her father challenged. "Because they deserve to know their family, all of it, even the parts that disappoint me." The honesty landed like a physical blow. Charles looked away first, something like regret crossing his features. How do you handle toxic family members when children are involved? Where do you draw the line between forgiveness and self-protection? Share your family boundaries below. Later, while the boys explored the backyard with their grandmother, Naomi wandered to the rose garden her mother had planted. Thomas found her there, hands brushing the blooms. "Your father told me why he lied," he said quietly. "He thought I would drop you if I believed the baby wasn't mine. He wanted to save you from a relationship that would only bring heartache." "He was right about the heartache," she said bitterly, "just wrong about who would cause it." Thomas moved closer, the garden's privacy emboldening him. "I haven't stopped loving you, Naomi. Not for a single day." Her body responded to his proximity, heart accelerating despite her mental caution. 2 years of distance hadn't diminished the pull between them. As they left her father's estate, Thomas helped buckle sleeping children into car seats before turning to her in the privacy of the garage. "I've respected your boundaries," he said, voice low and determined. "I've proven I've changed. I've waited. But I need to know if there's any chance for us, not just as co-parents, but as us." Her answer caught in her throat as headlights swept across them, revealing her stepmother watching from the shadows. After 18 months of co-parenting, separate homes, and carefully maintained boundaries, Naomi agreed to a date with Thomas. One night to discover if what remained between them was worth rebuilding or finally releasing. The invitation came after a successful parent-teacher conference at the boys' preschool, where they functioned so smoothly as a team that the teacher assumed they were still together. "Have dinner with me," Thomas suggested as they walked to their cars. "Just us. No lawyers, no families, no business discussions." She studied him, the man who had broken her heart but showed up consistently for their children ever since learning the truth. Who flew to Birmingham weekly, never complained about the arrangement, treated her with unwavering respect. "One dinner," she agreed. The rooftop restaurant overlooked Atlanta's skyline, city lights reflecting in both their eyes as they sat at a corner table. Close enough that their knees occasionally touched, distant enough that each could retreat if necessary. "You look beautiful," he said as she examined the menu. "I've missed seeing you dressed up." Her black cocktail dress had been a splurge, the first non-practical purchase she'd made since the boys were born. "You look well too. Less stressed." "I am. The company's stable. The foundation's taking off. But that's not why I'm happier." His eyes held hers. "It's having all of you in my life, even with limitations." The conversation flowed easier than she expected. Updates on the boys, her new remote development position with a progressive tech firm, his plans to expand family-friendly policies at Reeve Technologies. "I've been seeing a therapist," he volunteered over dessert, "working on why I defaulted to doubt instead of trust. Why I let other people's opinions override my own instincts about you." His honesty disarmed her defenses. She found herself sharing too, the loneliness of single motherhood, the strength she'd discovered, her cautious pride in the life she'd built from nothing. Their hands touched, reaching for the check, lingered longer than necessary. Electricity shot through her body, familiar chemistry that 2 years of separation hadn't dimmed. Is chemistry enough to rebuild a relationship after betrayal? What else must be present? Share what you believe makes reconciliation possible or impossible. Outside the restaurant, rain began falling, gentle at first, then suddenly heavy. Thomas pulled her under the awning, bodies close, the warmth of him achingly familiar. "I should go," she murmured, not moving away. "The sitter is staying overnight." "We agreed, remember?" His hand brushed a raindrop from her cheek. Time suspended between them. Past hurts and future possibilities balanced on this single moment. When his lips finally met hers, the kiss held questions neither had voiced. "Do we try again? Can we recover what was lost?" Her body answered before her mind could intervene, arms sliding around his neck, closing the careful distance they'd maintained for months. His hotel suite door closed behind them, the silence electric with anticipation and uncertainty. "We can just talk," he offered, maintaining the respectful distance he'd cultivated for months. Naomi stepped closer, decision made. "We've talked for over a year," she said, fingers reaching for his tie. "I want to know if everything else still works between us." What followed would determine if passion could truly be rebuilt on the foundation of hard-earned trust. 3 years to the day after she stood alone at a Greyhound station, Naomi walked down the aisle in a garden ceremony. Not as the daughter seeking approval or the abandoned mother fighting for recognition, but as a woman who had learned her own worth could never be determined by someone else's belief. The path to this day hadn't been direct or easy. After their reconnection, Naomi insisted on a full year of dating before she would consider engagement. Another 6 months passed before she agreed to combine their households. Her apartment in Birmingham exchanged for a home they chose together in Atlanta, equidistant between his corporate headquarters and her new tech incubator for single parents. The boys, now 5, raced around the garden in miniature tuxedos, charming guests with identical grins and distinct personalities. Elijah, the leader. Isaiah, the thinker. Isaac, the peacemaker. 3 miracles who had forced truth to surface when lies threatened to bury it forever. Her father walked her down the aisle. A reconciliation hard won through consistent accountability and boundaries. Thomas's mother arranged flowers, her earlier prejudice replaced by genuine affection for the grandchildren who had captured her heart. Georgia's sunshine filtered through oak branches draped with delicate flowers, casting dappled light across the gathering. Not the society wedding once planned in ballrooms, but something more meaningful. Both families united around 3 children who embodied second chances. Thomas waited beneath an arch of white roses, eyes never leaving her as she approached in a simple ivory gown. The vows they exchanged acknowledged both past wounds and future promises. "I choose to trust you," Naomi pledged, voice steady despite the emotion behind the words. "Not blindly, as before, but with eyes wide open to who you've proven yourself to be." "I choose to see you," Thomas responded, "not through others' perceptions or my own fears, but clearly, completely, exactly as you are." The reception unfolded on the lawn of their new foundation headquarters. A converted historic home dedicated to supporting single parents with childcare, education, and housing assistance. Their personal story transformed into community impact, pain redirected toward purpose. "To think this all started with 3 little surprises," Thomas whispered as they danced, his hand warm against the small of her back. "And one big mistake," she reminded him, though the words held no bitterness now. "The best mistake I ever made was letting you go," he countered, "because it forced me to become someone worthy of winning you back." What's your definition of a happy ending? Is it forgiveness, justice, love, or something entirely different? Share what you believe makes a story truly complete. Later, as guests departed and children slept, they stood on the balcony of their suite, overlooking the garden where they'd exchanged vows. His arms encircled her from behind, lips brushing her neck in the spot that had always been hers alone. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd opened that envelope?" he asked. She turned in his arms, hands framing his face. "We might have had an easier path, but I'm not sure we would have learned what we needed to learn." Their bodies found each other with the familiar rhythm of lovers who had lost and rediscovered one another. Passion deepened by absence, desire tempered by patience, physical connection reinforced by hard-earned emotional trust. The morning light revealed a future neither could have imagined that rainy night in Buckhead. Not perfect, but authentic. Built on truth rather than appearance. Strengthened by challenges rather than weakened by them. If this journey from betrayal to redemption touched something in you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that explore what happens when we're tested beyond what seems possible. Tell me in the comments which part of Naomi and Thomas's story resonated most with you. Was it the moment of betrayal, the vindication, or the courage to try again? Remember, sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come after what we thought was the end.